Greetings! Welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm. This video is going to be about a technique called Hugelkultur. This was developed in Germany, and it is a technique that uses largely free material to forcibly produce a lot of organic matter in the soil quickly. Okay? Now, these are done at different scales. I have seen people fill raised beds using this. I have seen, I do smaller ones. The original techniques were, mounts starting out shoulder or head high. Right, so this can be very large or very small. I tend to keep my stuff toward the small side. I don't want all of the exaggerated topography. The advantage of doing the large mounds in their original context was to have enough of a mound that it would be a windbreak and protect plants downwind using the height of the Hugo mound. The context in which I'm gardening here doesn't really lend itself to that scale of construction, Doesn't mean I won't experiment with it someday, but right now I'm working in small fenced enclosures, and a mound at the height of the fence would kind of defeat the purpose of some of the other things going on. So I'm making little guys, okay? The first thing you want to do is we want to dig a trench. I've already done this off camera. I trust that you know how to dig a trench. I also trust that you'd be royally bored watching me dig a trench for 2 hours, right? So I dug a trench. The trench is about a shovel height deep, about a foot deep or so. Okay? Can they see the shovel now? Right where I'm working here, hon? Okay. The trench here is about a foot deep. Give or take a little bit, I didn't exactly measure it, right? Good enough. Now we're going to fill this trench with organic matter. We're going to mound them, or we're going to end up mounding soil and organic matter up about 1 or 2 feet high when we're doing this, okay? There's different purposes for all of the different stages. I'm going to talk about them sequentially instead of all at once. The purpose of digging the trench is to loosen up the soil down low so that we can get organic matter down in and so that we can loosen up the soil. That is the same purpose for the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take the digging bar. I'm just going to kind of loosen up the soil here a bit. And this is just to make it a little easier to dig with the shovel, because the bottom of this trench is hard pan. So I want to chop through that. Get this soil nice and loose. Try not to step into peas that are already planted behind me. The peas I planted with my in a hurry method, if you got a chance to look at the quick garden prep. It's good enough. It's not as good as what I'm doing here, but I'll do that this way. I will do what's behind me here, this way next year. So you don't have to get everything done all in the same year. You can do some things the best way and some things good enough. Now that that's loose, I'm going to put some manure on it. This is my cast stall bedding. It's not just straight manure. Talked about this in a number of videos. It's a good shovelful all the way along. Hair's blowing in my face. Okay. And I'm going to dig this in. Anytime I have a hole in the ground, I do this in the bottom. You spend all the time and effort to get all of this dirt out. You want to get the maximum benefit for that energy investment. So mix some manure or compost or even peat moss if it's all you can get into the bottom to permanently loosen that lowest horizon. And get some fertility down low in there. This is a bad angle to shovel from. I'm trying to make sure you can see everything. Okay. Now, I'm going to put a thin mulch on top of that. Emphasis on thin. Especially when you're working in the bottom of a hole like this, or trench, if you get this too thick, and it just sits there and you don't mix it in with the soil, it'll go anaerobic and just ferment and turn into glop. And that fermented glop will be a barrier to root growth. The whole point here is to encourage root growth. So keep this mulch thin, and that thick layer is well turned into the soil. Okay, I've got 20 feet of trench here. This was 5. So I'm going to do the rest of this off camera, and then we will come back for the next step. Okay, we're done with breaking up that hard pan, digging in some manure, putting in a little mulch on top. Again, there's multiple functions to every step in this process. In digging the hard pan, one function is breaking up the hard pan, just pure and simple. But you could do that with a subsoiler and wouldn't get the same benefit. Mixing in the organic matter will help prevent it from re-cementing back into hard pan with the weight of the soil on top. And the fact that it's loose and has organic matter in there is going to promote worms. Get worms going down in, and they will continue to aerate and maintain that looseness. And also, worms perform a very important function called bioturbation, which is the ability of animals to move soil up and down the soil horizons. So the worms will go up and feed, and then go down and hibernate, and up and feed, and down and up and down, and all the time they're leaving a trail of worm turds up and down. So as they go up to the higher levels where we're going to put more organic matter, the fact that they can get in deeper means they will continue to carry more of that organic matter down. They will also be accidentally consuming clay particles from the lower levels and bringing them up. So that mixture of the organic and the clay is what gives us our all-important quality soil structure. If you're not sure what soil structure is, I'll leave a link in the description where you can go see a video I did recently on soil structure, texture, and horizon. So I would encourage you to go look at that. Now, the next layer also performs multiple functions. The next layer is dead wood. Okay? So I have a wheelbarrow full of dead logs. This is all stuff I could break by hand. It's all partially to mostly decomposed. Okay? Now, we get a lot of functions on this. One is just the addition of organic matter. It's another way to add free organic matter. That's a function. But there's 2 functions that are almost even more important than that. One is I'm inoculating the soil with all of the quality fungi that are growing on this wood. So I'm increasing the fungal community, and also with putting the manure down does this on the bacteria side. I'm adding beneficial microorganisms and a balance of them. I have bacteria from the manure, fungus from the wood, also bacteria from the wood. Both will be in here. So I'm inoculating my soil and fostering a healthy soil microbiome. Okay, that's the second function. The third is water retention. So partially decayed wood is a sponge. Even in dry conditions, go into a forest and find a partially decayed wood and lift it up, and it'll be soggy. Okay? So by putting a lot of this in my soil, I am adding a sponge which will help drought-proof the garden. Now, caution. I am in a winter cold, summer wet environment. That is the environment where this system works. If you are in the wet tropics, this wood will oxidize and decompose so rapidly you won't get the full benefit, and you should be thinking more about something along the lines of biochar and terra preta to maintain organic matter in the soil to foster that fungal community. Here, that piece of wood will still be fostering that fungal community 300 years from now. I'm okay with that, right? So I can do this once. It's a lot of work, but I can do this once, and I have a multi-generation food production system, okay? If this was the Amazon basin, that would not be true, and you would want to go more in the biochar direction. Here, I honestly don't think you need biochar in the Northeast. It doesn't hurt anything. There are some benefits to it that you can't get from other methods, but I don't think it's necessary. It's just fine, but it's not necessary, because I can do this and it will last for more than my lifetime, okay? The other caution is if you're in a summer dry region. That wood is a sponge. A sponge is a double-edged sword. A wet sponge releases water, but a dry sponge soaks it up. So if you are in Colorado, Arizona, anywhere west of the Mississippi where you have a really dry climate, if you're watching this from Israel, if you're watching this from arid Spain, don't do this method. There you want to think more about plant spacing. You want to think about adding direct compost that's already fully decomposed. You want to think about rock mulch methods for drought proofing your garden, and you want to think about drought adapted varieties and species to grow, right? You want to take a different approach. This is a humid, temperate approach, okay? Context is a thing, right? Not every method works in every context. So I'm adding my wood in. Now, the pattern for this, we want to nestle these into the ground, and we want to initially fill the hole with large material. I'm going to come up to just about level with this. So initially all the big stuff goes in. And the longer, the larger the wood you use in here, and the taller you make it, the longer you'll have this drought-proofing sponge effect. So you do want to use some big ones. Okay? Now around those we'll pack smaller sticks and try to fill in as much of that airspace as possible. I see some ants in there, that's just fine. They're also good at helping us with bioturbation. So the last thing that this is going to do is it's going to keep a lot of air in the soil, and it's going to really make it easy for roots to penetrate deep. Because this is not the top layer, we're going to put more on top of this. That was redundant. But this will keep it from packing down tight. So we'll have very good root penetration. He's a bigger piece, but he's almost entirely decomposed. So that's fine. He can go there. Kind of nestling it in and trying to pack it as tight as possible is what we're up to. Okay. That wheelbarrow just did about half of my trench. I'm going to go get another wheelbarrow. I'll fill it up all the way along, and then we'll do the next section. Frame. Okay, so we have all of our dead sticks. Like I said, this is going to be a smaller mound, not a big, great, giant one. The next thing that we want to do is we want to work some really small organic matter, i.e. mulch-sized material, into this, and we want to get some fertilizer in this. These sticks are all about water retention and adding organic carbon. They're not fertilizer. In fact, as they decompose, one of the downsides of this is they will rob nitrogen from their surroundings. Not the sticks themselves, but the fungi that decompose them will consume a lot of nitrogen. So we need to put some fertilizer down. Now, putting fertilizer down, we need to think what I'm going to grow here. This is going to be a tomato bed. I like to put the tomatoes right against the fence because it's easy to tie them up. I don't need to put any extra stakes in here. Okay? And also the chickens don't really bother them. So, I've tried putting peas along these fences. It doesn't work. The chickens just eat them. It's a disaster. But the tomatoes, they don't bother. So tomatoes are a heavy feeder. You do want to go a little light on the nitrogen. They need a lot of phosphate, a lot of potash, and a lot of micronutrients. Okay? So I'm going to add a couple forms of fertilizer. And a lot of calcium. If you don't have enough calcium, they'll get blossom and rot. So the first thing I'm going to add is good for both calcium and phosphate, and that's bone meal. So I'm going to give a sprinkle of bone meal across this whole trench. This is slow release, but some of it will start to be available this year. And that'll give us some bone meal and some phosphate and some calcium. And some micronutrients as well. Okay? There's our first thing. Now, I want more calcium in there than that, but I don't want to go ham with lime, which is what I would do if this was a pepper patch, because tomatoes wanted a little acid. So I'm going to crumble up some eggshells. These will not be fertilizer for this year. This is calcium for next year. And the year after that, and the year after that. It will take a long time for all those fungi that are in those sticks to break down these eggshells. This will be a very good calcium supplement. I have a couple fall uncrumbled, that's fine. It's about half. This is my slow release calcium. Also,
it's almost free.
Yeah, it is free. I'm using a waste product. I mean, obviously the eggs are not free. We fed all these chickens a lot of feed to get these eggshells. But it is free in the sense that it's a waste product that most people would just throw out. We like that. Okay. The next thing I'm going to put down, we still haven't done potash. A very good potash source, wood ashes. Kitty, you don't want to eat the wood ashes. This will give us some potassium. Put down a dusting of that. And now for some nitrogen and for some mulch-sized material, I have both at once with my calf stall bedding. If you've been watching my channel for any time, you knew you were going to see this eventually in this video. Well, I guess you already saw it. But we're going to top coat with this, just kind of wiggle it down in. Again, we don't want big lumps of this. It'll heat. The big chunks of wood won't heat, but big lumps of this mulch will. The wood won't decompose fast enough. And this is nitrogen. And an extra bit of phosphate. Remember I said tomatoes need a lot of phosphate to flower and fruit. So it's a second way to get phosphate in there. And it'll have a lot of micronutrients. The Highland Appalachians are very well known for being very poor in selenium and calcium, and a lot of other micronutrients. And this will be high in all of those things because they're in all the animal feeds. So we'll work some of this in there. So feed the worms, they'll love it, they'll get to go into town in here, have lots of worm babies, and we like worm babies. Okay. Now, the soil starts to go back in. Again, we need the clays in the soil to form the nice, friable, water-retaining soil structure. A lot of gardeners think clay is a dirty word, but you need some. You need all of it. You just need it in balance. Shake all the dirt off of this and leave it upside down. That'll just die. Dehydrate and die. And I want all that soil and organic matter in here. And these nice tall tomatoes will shade out. If a little grass grows, I don't care too much. I don't care about a weed until it actually becomes a problem for my plant. I'm working on a food engine, not an art entry for a museum. It doesn't have to be perfectly weed-free. Put your time in where it matters. How often you weed's not a competition. The metric that counts is how many pounds of food you grow. Not how much time you spend weeding the thing. Okay. Now on top of that, we'll put a final layer of mulch. This will help us with some weed control and more fertilizer, more organic matter. We've developed a nice low mound, which is what we were after. Well amended soil, well mulched soil, it'll retain water well. So you can do this at any scale. I'm just doing a long trench right along the fence here. But if you wanted to do this as part of double digging a bed, you could. You could dig this trench, put the soil in, then dig another trench, do it again, cover it, and just work your way across, one trench width at a time. Am I all in frame, hon? Okay. One trench width at a time and dig a large area. It's a lot of work, but you only have to do it once. In your lifetime, you only have to do it once. Okay? You can keep adding mulch up on top and fertilizer up on top. That fertilizer will keep being worked in by the worms, and you will never lose this lovely deep soil that you're in the process of forming. Okay? So do it once, last a lifetime. Eventually, all of my beds will look like this. I use faster methods in the meantime. But this is the gold standard. This is what I want to get everything to eventually. Do what you have time to. If you have time to do one trench this year, do it. Use the faster methods to get something. Not everyone has to be perfect. You have time. You can keep working into this. Okay? Compare methods in your area, in your context, and see what works. Do some easy methods, do some harder methods, see how they all produce. Okay? And everything you do every year, your garden will get better and better and better. You don't just have a perfect garden your first year on a new site. It ain't gonna happen. Your first year is just a bare-knuckle cage fight against the grass. If you get one vegetable and work toward defeating the grass, you've made progress. That's your first year. Your second year, you'll get some stuff. You'll have more time. You'll get more good tilled beds in. You'll get more. Your third year, you'll start to see what your garden's capable of. And every year after that, they'll get better and better and better. Okay? So, I hope this helps. I hope that you'll go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I'm going to quit here for this video because you see the process. I've just got to keep going with it. And I hope that you will join us next time here at Old Ways Rising.